But I'm still going. I'm doing it as we speak. I'm continuing to, but it still hasn't even sent it over to my other phone.
Okay.
Still there swirling.
All right. What's up, everyone? This is Africa Reimagined. My name is Kwame Gonza. As usual, we come here to talk about our continent and the events that are transpiring, the events of the day, and how they are affecting our mother continent, Africa, and all the African people around the world, definitely. I'm supposed to have some guests for us to have this potent discussion about what we have called the three stages to total liberation, as put up by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah wrote a lot. We all know that there is no African leader or any leader of the black people around the world who wrote so much like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. We know Honorable Marcus Garvey was able to write a lot also the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey. But apart from these few who were in the seat of leadership, there is very, very few. So Nkrumah he wrote more than 20 books and pamphlets put together. So in Africa Must Unite, especially, he went out to lay out a procedure or a process through which Africa should be liberated. And he went ahead to call that the three stages of Africa's liberation. So we are going to digest those three stages to Africa's liberation to be able to understand really what Dr. Kwame Nkrumah is talking about in these three stages, which he said that they will be able to help the total liberation of Africa. The total liberation of Africa. So Nkrumah's three stages to total African liberation. That is what we have termed this talk today. Nkrumah's three stages to total liberation or to total African liberation. And one of those is get independence, okay? What Nkrumah called political kingdom. Seek ye first the political kingdom. When Nkrumah spoke about seek ye first the political kingdom and all the other things shall be added unto you, these are some of the terms which he used. So this is what Nkrumah termed as get independence, okay? Get independence. And that is what Nkrumah used to say is the political kingdom. Now, he said also that consolidate that independence. Consolidate that independence. The consolidation of independence was the African unity, which Nkrumah was speaking about. Okay, that was the unity. He was the reason why he was fighting very hard for 32 African independent states in 1963 is that he wanted to consolidate that independence. He was fighting for unity. If you remember, even when Nkrumah was in Guinea-Conakry, after he was removed from power in Ghana and went to Conakry, he made a statement. Nkrumah made a statement and said that I have built up the country for them. And he was talking about the Ghanaians. I've given them independence. and I have built up the country for them. The only reason I want to go back to Ghana is because of African unity. Okay, so that is, to him, he looked at African unity as the only means of consolidating the independence of the African states. So if that independence was not consolidated, then it left a gap, it left the door open for interference into Africa's independence, and that is what would lead to the compromise. And now the third stage, which Nkrumah put out there, was to start the reconstruction process. Okay, start the reconstruction process of the African continent. Actually, what has been going on the African continent today is mediocrity. When you hear leaders, they have built a stadium here, they have built a school here, they have started the free education here, they have started, they have built a road here, and they celebrate very much, and they say they are doing a lot. Actually, Africa has not started working. That is the truth about it. So when Nkrumah is talking about reconstruction process, he's talking about what you are seeing happening in China, or what happened in the United States during the United States Gilded Age, what they call Gilded Age. What happened in the United States is that they built interstate road highways, and these mega infrastructures, these massive infrastructures, led to the explosion of growth. This happened during the years of Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, that the United States got a lot of power and started building interstate highways. And this is the same thing which we are seeing that has happened in China. That China, they have built a lot of infrastructure, massive infrastructure. One of the guys who present on BBC's there's a program on BBC which has to do with the cars. Jeremy is called Jeremy Clarkson. Jeremy Clarkson went to China and saw the infrastructure. Jeremy Clarkson is from Britain, so he went to China and he was amazed. Jeremy Clarkson was amazed. This is an English guy. This is a European guy, and these European guys normally they look down on most of the other races, like the blacks, the Chinese. So Jeremy Clarkson went to China and he saw. I would like you to look for that video. Actually, I think it was sponsored by Amazon Films. Amazon, the division. Amazon is the division which has to do with the cinemas. Amazon Prime. Yeah, it is called Amazon Prime. So he saw that the Chinese are building 6,000 miles, 6,000, I think 6,000 kilometers of highway every single year. What we are talking about highway, highways, two-way roads, but they are building 6,000 of those every year. So this is what they call reconstruction. Okay. The massive industrialization, explosion in industries like what you are seeing that happens in China, is happening in China today and has happened in the last 30 years. And then when we are talking about reconstruction, the same thing that happened in the United States during the Gilded Age, that they were able to build massive infrastructure, interstate. So when we are talking about interstate highways, then we are talking about people building roads, highways from like Johannesburg up to Cairo, all through Lusaka, Zambia, going all the way, passing through Tanzania. Those are the interstate, or building high-speed train, ways, rails all the way from East Africa, maybe up to West Africa. So that is the reconstruction process which Dr. Nkrumah was talking about when we are talking about reconstruction. Okay, that is the reconstruction. A few days ago, I saw a video which was going about, I think someone published a video on YouTube about Dr. Chombori. And Dr. Chombori was saying that Africa's independence, Africa was given a fake independence. That is what they were saying, that Africa was given a fake independence. But I would like to differ. Myself, I would like to differ on that assertion that Africa was, given, that Africa was given a fake independence. Africa was not really given a fake independence. Africa was given real independence, or it fought for. Actually, Africa was not given the independence, but rather it fought for the independence. Okay, it fought for the independence, and in many cases, our leaders, you see, our leaders, those ones in the Pan-African circle, they have become disillusioned about the events happening in Africa, about the things happening within the political space. Okay, our Pan-African leaders, many cases, they have become disillusioned about what is happening in the political space, and they have given up. Okay, after they have fought in a certain way which they thought was the only means of liberation. Like, for example, you can talk of the people, especially who talk about reforming the system, who want to work with the existing system, okay, the neo-colonial system. That is what I'm talking about, because neo-colonialism, as we know, ascended, and consolidated its position in 1966 after overthrowing Nkrumah, because that was the only fighter which neo-colonialism, feared Nkrumah, people like Lumumba in the Congo. So when those guys were removed, neo-colonialism was able to consolidate its space and its place on the continent. Now, what happens is that this neo-colonialism, when it does and blocks these people who are trying to work with it, the Pan-Africanists, they normally run back because they fought in a certain way, and they expected that when they act well in a certain way, these people, they will be able to open up space for them. Okay, I could give examples. Dr. Chombora has wanted, she's a very hardworking lady, that she has wanted to work with the existing system very, very much. She came to Ghana. She wanted even to establish a smart city, which smart city was supposed to be established in places like Takoradi. People like Akon, they've wanted to establish, smart cities in Senegal and Uganda, all these places. So, but now when they fail, when this neo-colonial infrastructure or structure or political structure fails them, then they sort of become disillusioned. So, Dr. Chombori Kwao came out and said that the neo-colonial structure is very hard to work with, and she said that the independence which was given to Africa is fake. Okay, is fake. But for me, I have a different view. I think that the independence which was given to Africa is not fake. Okay, is not fake, but it was compromised. Okay, it was very, very compromised. It was very much compromised, like what we spoke about. We said that Nkrumah laid out stages for the liberation of this continent. So those stages, when they were not followed, then that is where the compromise came in. My brother, thank you very much. VJ Kobe, the untouchable, thank you for logging in. Yeah, thank you. I would like to invite anyone who wants to, engage in the conversation. I can send the link so that we can have this conversation. If you have any information you think that you want to share regarding this conversation, I'm sending the link into the chat room, so that you can join the conversation. If you want to join the conversation about the 3 stages of liberation which Nkrumah laid out there, I've sent the link into the chat room so you can join the conversation. The link is StreamYard, so you can join the conversation. Now, when our Pan-African leaders have become disillusioned about the existing system, they have come out to term the existing system in a certain way by saying that the system is corrupted. The system, of course, the neo-colonial system is supposed to be corrupted. The colonial system is supposed to be corrupted because its purpose is to ship resources from Africa and send those resources to the Western world. That is the purpose. Whether you are talking about slavery, this is imperialism. So I think this will be for another day, but imperialism, that is what imperialism is about. Imperialism, Nkrumah said that it changes form, but the substance, okay? I quote Nkrumah because Nkrumah is the utmost authority when it comes to African liberation, when it comes to Africa's problems, and solutions. Nkrumah is the utmost authority, is the undisputed utmost authority when it comes to Africa's problems, because he is someone who took time to analyze society. He analyzed our society entirely, okay, from the bottom of this of our society, the structures of our society. He analyzed them and saw the problems and put them out there. But he did not stop there. He also gave the solutions to these problems. So people have not read Nkrumah's works extensively. So I quote him. So Nkrumah said that imperialism changes only in form, okay? Only in form, but the substance of imperialism is the same. So what did he mean? What did Nkrumah mean by saying all this? So when he's talking about form, what are the forms of imperialism? One, slavery. Okay, because the reason why the Europeans as imperialists came from Europe to come to Africa, what was the reason? The reason was for raw materials and labor, free labor. Okay, raw materials to build up Europe. The reasons were economic. That was the reason why these Europeans came to the African continent. So those reasons were economic, and those reasons did not go away. So slavery was a form of imperialism. That is what Nkrumah is talking about. Okay, so the substance itself is the economic. It did not change. So that is what Nkrumah said, that the form, it is only the form of imperialism that has changed, but the substance is still the same. Okay, so slavery was a form of imperialism. Okay, when we defeated slavery, which was defeated by Haiti, contrary to what everyone tells you, that slavery was stopped by Europeans and what they never stopped. Those guys, they never stopped slavery. The people who helped to stop slavery, who defeated slavery, it was Haiti. When Haiti fought against France, Spain, and Britain and defeated them, then these guys, that's when they dreamt of stopping slavery, because they were defeated. They saw that this was not this means of accumulating capital was not viable anymore. And actually they had even already accumulated capital for industrialization, because slavery provided free labor for them. So when it provided this free labor for them, then they got time. Europeans got time to engage in innovation. All of you who have engaged in labor and looking for money know that the moment you as a person secure your means of survival, for example, you have a good job which gives you enough to feed yourself, then you start thinking about things creatively. If you are not a lazy person, you start thinking creatively how you can help society. And those of you who have read about Maslow's hierarchy of needs know self-actualization and all those things. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you go and examine it. So when slavery provided free labor to the Europeans, they got time to luxuriate, and those ones who wanted to innovate, they got capital even to innovate. And then that is what led to the explosion of industrialization, because we came from slavery, and then we went to the first industrial revolution, which happened in Britain. But all these things were aided by slavery. Okay, so that is what happened. So Nkrumah sees slavery as a form of imperialism, and because that is what it is a form of imperialism. Number two, when slavery was defeated by Haiti, colonialism was instituted. You remember the Berlin Conference. Slavery started, the first slaves who were delivered in Jamestown, the United States, for example, they say it was around 1619, okay? 1619, that's the 17th century, the start of the 17th century. So now when slavery was defeated in the 18th century by Haiti, then we got what? We got colonialism. Colonialism was instituted in 1884 or 18, what you have been hearing normally, Berlin Conference. That was a form of imperialism. That colonialism was a form of imperialism. Now, number three, neocolonialism. So when the people fought against 1945, when people fought against this colonialism and defeated it, then they changed the form Okay, so this is what Nkrumah is seeing when he's talking about things. When Nkrumah is talking about things, this is what he means. So, and all this work has been documented. The good thing about Nkrumah is that he documented all this information for us because he understood that if he is not able to achieve the vision of unifying the continent, the vision, I call it a vision, not a dream, because this dream was birthed by the Honorable Marcus Garvey. So what was a dream by Honorable Marcus Garvey became a vision. It became a vision by Nkrumah. And now it will become a reality in our generation if we work enough. But we will have to work on it. If we do not work on it, then nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. So Nkrumah says that imperialism only changes the form, slavery, colonialism, neo-colonialism. These are the forms, but the substance, okay, the substance stays the same. Okay, imperialism changes only the form, but it stays the same in substance. So the substance is what imperialism is trying, to achieve. Okay, is what imperialism is trying to achieve. That is the substance of imperialism. Okay, the substance of imperialism, and all this is economic terms, is the continued exploitation of Africa. That is what imperialism was trying to achieve. That is what imperialism was trying to achieve. Okay, so now we go back again to examine. We go back to examine the three stages. So those three stages, which Nkrumah put out and said, get independence, which is the political kingdom. Seek first the political kingdom, and now consolidate that independence through African unity and start the reconstruction process. So the independence was compromised. So we are right now where we are back at the stage of getting that independence because it was compromised. Now we have to fight for it again because imperialism came and took over. We allowed it. We failed to unify, to consolidate the independence. In 1963, we failed to consolidate that independence. So we could not start the reconstruction process of the African continent. And so what imperialism allowed us to have is what we had and is what we have. You have had Ghana right now going back to the IMF. Okay, you have seen Uganda is struggling. You have seen South Africa struggling, Kenya struggling. All these, we can only do what imperialism, which is mostly Western imperialism, allows us to do. Okay, so that is where the problems are coming. So our Pan-Africanists, because many of them have not diagnosed the problem, have not taken time to read Nkrumah's work, so they will be jumping around with different solutions and diagnosis and engaging in analysis of social problems, horizontal, what we call horizontal problems instead of vertical problems. Because Nkrumah, in one of the speeches, especially one of his most powerful speech, which he gave in 1963 in Addis Ababa, Nkrumah said that African unity is above all a political kingdom that can only be achieved by political means. The economic and social welfare of Africa will come within the political, kingdom and not the other way around. Not the other way around. So what it means, let me repeat that. Let me paraphrase Nkrumah. Nkrumah says that African, unity is above all a political kingdom that can only be achieved by political means. That is 1963 in Addis Ababa, one of his most iconic speeches. African unity is above all a political kingdom that can only be achieved by political means. And the social and economic development or welfare of Africa will come within the political means and not the other way around. So what does Nkrumah mean by this? So it's the same thing which he was saying in the 1960s and 1980s. I mean, 1960s and 1950s, at the close of 1950, 58, what Nkrumah was saying is the same thing. Nkrumah was saying that seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you. So we find that a lot of people, they engage in horizontal issues. Horizontal issues, I mean that the social issues, they are talking about corruption, they are talking about, unemployment, they're talking about all kind of things, that they are the problems, they are Africa's problem. And of course, many of you have heard corruption. Corruption is the problem. Corruption is Africa's problem. Corruption is Africa's problem. You see, those are horizontal issues. But then we have the vertical. These are the things which Nkrumah identified and said that Africa has to unify politically first for us to be able to start the reconstruction of our continent. You see, so this is what Nkrumah meant when he said, seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you. And then these are the stages. This is why he outlined the stages. He outlined the stages for us and said, okay, and he said that get independence. Okay, that is what Nkrumah meant by get independence, consolidate that independence through African unity, and start the reconstruction process. I want to repeat, the independence was compromised. It was not fake, as Dr. Chombori said. The independence which we got is not fake, as Dr. Chombori said, but it was just compromised. The independence was real. The independence was real, which we achieved during independence. But we failed to consolidate that independence. We ourselves failed to consolidate that independence. Okay? And we failed to consolidate that independence through unifying Africa. We failed to unify Africa. Okay? We failed to unify Africa. So when we failed to unify Africa, then we failed to consolidate that independence, and the independence was compromised. Number three, we were supposed to start the reconstruction process. So that reconstruction process also did not happen. So the reconstruction process did not happen because the independence was compromised and we did not consolidate that independence. So that is what Nkrumah meant by get independence, seek first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you. Consolidate that independence through African unity. Okay? Consolidate that independence through African unity. Okay? When you consolidate that independence through African unity, then start the reconstruction process. Someone is in the background. If you want to join me. I've already added you. Unmute yourself, unmute your microphone, and let's send the conversation further. Yeah, I've unmuted you actually. Hello.
Oh, yes, Kwame. Yes, Kwame. I'm here.
Okay, welcome, my brother. Where are you calling from?
This is Titi. I'm in South Africa.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much, Titi. Is it possible for you to put your video on?
Okay, let's see. Yeah.
Excellent. Is it Ingrid who invited you?
Yes, it is.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. We were having this discussion, and we are talking about the three stages which Nkrumah laid out when it comes to the total liberation of the African continent. Now, Nkrumah said in Africa Must Unite and pointed out that we must get independence, and get independence, consolidate that independence, and start the reconstruction process. And I argue from my observation of what is going on in the African continent, I argue and I observed from my analysis, and I've read Nkrumah widely. I see from my analysis that ever since 1966, when Nkrumah was overthrown, our independence was compromised. So when this independence was compromised, then, we did not consolidate, like how Nkrumah said. I put a chart here. Let me see. Let me see if I can get it, so you can have a look at it. My brother.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
This is the
Excellent. Yeah, can you see? So in Africa Must Unite, Nkrumah said, get independence. And that is what normally he said, seek ye first the political kingdom and all the other things shall be added unto you. That is what Nkrumah meant. And then he said, consolidate that independence through unity. African unity was supposed to consolidate that independence and then block out the interference and then start the reconstruction process. That is the rapid industrialization, build interstate highways, energy systems and mining and stuff like that. So that is according to Nkrumah what he was talking about. I don't know whether you have a different view, because the problems which are facing Africa today, I think that they are stemming from us not understanding these things, or the leaders neglecting what Nkrumah was talking about. What is your view, my brother? Thank you.
Well, I would have put in brackets also that I'm a Pan-Africanist. But
yes,
then you see, let's keep in mind that Pan-Africanists today, we've got a lack when it comes to reading and understanding ideology. Firstly, when Ingrid forwarded me this application, my response,
yes.
I thought it was only going to be on YouTube. So I went on YouTube, and my response to her was that this is a blueprint. When Nkrumah was overthrown and he went into to be the honorary president in Conakry. Was it Conakry?
Conakry.
Yeah.
Guinea Conakry.
I've listened to his broadcasts. He was broadcasting on radio. I've listened to that. When you see, it takes something out of a human being. The first African country or let's say an African nation, to get its supposed political independence. When they had achieved, the first thing he said when they were achieving the political kingdom was that, guys, we just started. We are not free until each and every inch of Africa is free. And then he started with this industrialization. Ghana was industrialized during Nkrumah. Yes, of course, now they went in and basically tried to distract the construction when he was building up. Well, I know in one of the broadcasts he says that, remember, we had opened schools. All of the freedom fighters in Africa found refuge in Ghana. But now today, what we find, and as you were saying it, the social issues. I've been with one guy who said that there are a lot of us who are discussing or debating micro issues instead of the macro issues. You've looked at it and said
that's what I call the horizontal issues.
Yeah, the horizontal versus the vertical.
Yes.
Yeah, so I subscribe to this thing of saying that, you see, unity, there's something. Okay, like for instance, take what happened in Sri Lanka just yesterday or 2 days back, when a united people were able to access the presidential palace. How that came about is another thing, but we need to understand unity as Pan-Africanists, because I a lot of what would you say? A lot of debates that I have with Pan-Africanists, more especially coming from the South African perspective. South Africa is riddled with Afrophobia. I'm not going to say xenophobia. It's Afrophobia. There is a sense in which black is bad, in which we are not. It's another thing. It's a micro issue. It's a social issue. It's something that if we were united, it would not be there. But then now, when we need to go back. These kind of sittings are very necessary, whereby we need to bring in Pan-Africanists to come and actually learn from each other, to come and be able to articulate an ideology. Because right now, we are Pan-Africanists because we felt a social push. It was a social push. There is no conviction in many of us which would go and say that we are driven from within. It takes something. I don't know how people don't see that, when you've gotten your supposed independence, Ghana could have been far. Ghana could have been what South Africa seems to be like right now, as the breadbasket of Africa, or the biggest economy. But Nkrumah put all those aside to say that you see, for his overthrow, you can ascribe it to the fact that he was taking away political power. I mean, once he's taken political power, he began to take economic power. He built bridges, he built roads, he built networks of infrastructure that was going to enable the people. And then they started calling it a debt. He's driving the country into debt, where he was actually creating capital. He was creating capital. We don't see it today because we are focusing on who needs to be employed by who at what time. So we end up being, in some sort of a quagmire. Because once we win on one social issue or one horizontal issue, there is another one. We will never run out of social issues. We will never run out of corruption. And when it comes to corruption, really, we need to look beyond I call it media intelligence. Most of us are media intelligent. Whatever the media says, that is what we're pushing. So we need to dial it back. I remember on the 12th of September 2001, a day after the Twin Towers were attacked, the Secretary of State came and said, "Oh, we've misplaced 2.1 trillion."
Wow.
And somehow that kind of corruption did not register in us. Today, the corruption that happens in these Western countries still does not register in us, because the media is just painting it over as if they've got enough money, they can do this and that. So I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely, my brother. When it comes to the idea of corruption that is taunted so much, as you have said, it is definitely, I think, a Western tactic of keeping Africa subjugated in some way. This is how I have looked at it. And the Western narrative, making it the mainstream narrative, and this brainwashing and programming, like what we have seen, that the DSTV multi-choice was able to ban RT, because they want to program not only Africans actually, but including their people. They don't want Africans to know, for example, what is happening in Russia, what Russia is saying, you see. So they are trying to subjugate the truth. They are trying to step on top of the truth, so that Africans can think in a certain way. But the topic of corruption, that is something which I'm actually arranging a program for us to scrutinize in its entirety, to see is really what is happening in Africa. Corruption. When we are talking about corruption, if an African on the road, who is a police officer who has been standing in the sun for the whole day and he earns $300 in a month, and then you have, he's standing there and he takes money from a guy who has a wretched car, and he also is feeding his family, and lets him go on the road and gives him a bottle of water to take, is the same person. We term that as corruption. And then we leave a person like George Bush and Tony Blair, they go into Afghanistan and they kill, or Iraq, and they kill 1 million people. I don't know whether people understand what that means. And we say these people are not corrupt. So that is, when we are talking about corruption, that is the view from which I would like to look at it. The United States puts sanctions and people suffer. Iraq, for example, I will just point out Iraq again. In the 1990s, during the first Gulf War, they put sanctions on Iraq, and 500,000, 500,000 children died because of lack of medicine. Sanctions. So when we are talking about corruption, I think we need to look at corruption in its entirety. But like I said, that is a topic for another day. So that is why I said that Nkrumah, he's an authority when it comes to the analysis of the African continent and its problems, because he is someone who took time to analyze society. Our ancestors during that time, people like Robert Sobukwe, these are people who took time to analyze and go deep into society. They grappled with our society and analyzed it to find the problems, and then before profiling these solutions. So and they gave these solutions, and they did not just stop at giving those solutions. They wrote them down and said, these are the solutions. And now we have a generation of people who came after them, which I call, because this age, I normally call this age the age of demagoguery, because we have demagogues who say, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do that for you. And when they come, they fail to do the things. They see the reality, is different from what, they see what is there is different from what they expected when they were not in power. And were saying this.
Yeah.
And actually, some of them know the truth that we can't do this thing. But because you have this thirst for sitting in the seat of power, and then also serving themselves on these resources, so they end up in this kind of demagoguery. We have seen in Britain, for example, the resignation of Cameroon, David Cameron, and then when he realized that things are not what he expected, he ran away, he resigned. Then we saw Theresa May, she also came, and then things, they were not what she expected, she resigned. And then we see, Boris Johnson, he came, things were not what he expected, he resigned. So we see that this is an age of demagoguery. So this age of demagoguery is what our leaders have also bought in, some of our leaders. And so we are experiencing that age that people are lazy. They think that, you are not supposed to engage in hard work. You see, you are just supposed to go to the IMF, the money is there. They'll give you the money so that you can do whatever you want in your country. You are not supposed to engage in this struggle with the forces that have been keeping you down. Imperialism has been keeping us down for a very long time, for the last 600 years. And these guys, they think that all of a sudden imperialism has changed. Now it has put on a good face. Now all of a sudden, a devil has become an angel. Now he's there to give you aid. He's there to give you, and they don't respect the solutions which we are given by our ancestors. They don't respect the solutions which we are given by Honorable Marcus Garvey. They don't respect the solutions which we are given by Kwame Nkrumah, solutions which we are given by Robert Sobukwe, solutions which we are given, by George Padmore, Walter Rodney, Honorable Marcus Garvey. All these people, these guys, they don't respect those solutions. They just think that a white man with his World Bank and IMF all of a sudden has the solutions to Africa's problem. All the economic policy, what economic terms they throw around, economic jargons, single digit inflation, all these things, and they move around, lying to our people. So we see that we are in an age of demagoguery, and so they take on those terms. They're talking about corruption. So all these horizontal terms, they are the problems, social issues, women's rights. These are, it's like our ancestors do not understand human rights. That is what they are saying, that Nkrumah did not understand human rights. Nkrumah, who put numerous women in his cabinet, how can you say that Nkrumah did not understand human rights? So you are throwing around human rights. But Nkrumah told us that these are not the problems. Those are social issues, the economic, the imperialists. He actually said that the reason why these people came here, why imperialism came here, is economic, but the solution is not economic. The solution is political. Nkrumah consistently, this was a theme in all his speeches and his writings. But sometimes I'm amazed at how Pan-Africanists, some of them will insist, and they say the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is the solution. This is the solution. Corruption, once we solve corruption, then everything will be okay. Once we solve human rights, there's so much violation of human Africa's problem.
Let me come in here on 5 issues from from your address right now. Let's start first with corruption. I've said to many people that what we call corruption as the black nation, what we call corruption, they call exploitation. There is no corruption that happens without the Western imperialists. The African Union commissioned a research, and I think the former president of South Africa, Mbeki, actually put it to paper to say that the capital flight that leaves Africa and goes to one of the Western countries, it's at about 5 trillion a year. And that is how we are assisted in our corruption. We are enabled, because once again, what we call corruption, they call exploitation. So when it comes to corruption, we should just wait there and remember that whenever we say, oh, somebody's corrupt, there is a Western influence. There's a third force behind all of that. So you speak about Zim, and I think Ingrid just sent me a message here to remind me what we always say. and what we learned from Ru in Zim, that let's not forget where Zimbabwe is right now. We can talk about the sanctions in Iraq and what happened. Right now, Zimbabwe is still going through sanctions. There were more sanctions. Just only this year, I think, Russia was able to overtake Zimbabwe with sanctions. There was no country which was more sanctioned than Zimbabwe. And somehow Africans have to forget that. They have to internalize that, think that black Zimbabweans or black people in Zimbabwe are not up to par because they're trying to live their life in a system that is actually oppressing them. And I can call that our fault. Because if we had what Nkrumah was saying, we would be having intra-Africa trade, which I can assure you, today I actually tried to put it on Twitter to say that there's like a new BM, it's a Benz, there's a new Benz, a sport car, very nice. I put it on Twitter that there is no need for that car. And whoever thinks that there's a need for that car should be killed. Like, I'm just like that. They're always banning me on Twitter because we need to think out of the box. We need to think like a people who were once dispossessed, who need to regain their rightful place. There are some things which we should not be going out of the continent for. There is enough oil in the continent. They are exploiting it. Our division serves the colonial masters. It serves imperialism, whereby the raw materials are exported for the comfort. It's not like you're saying, the invasion was economic. If it was not that they wanted something out of the continent, they would not be here. Somebody said that they would not have invaded if, I think it was Malcolm X, they would not have invaded if Africa was not beautiful. They saw the land and these people, and it was beautiful, and they invaded. The third one, when you're talking about Sobukwe, there is something, a quote I read from Sobukwe, and he was at the time in Ghana, I think under the auspice of, under the protection and the auspice and the negotiation and the counsel of Nkrumah. And he said something which I'm going to put it out there so that people can let it, let it dance in your mind a little bit to say that, is it not yet time? Because I actually put it on Twitter as my pinned tweet. So Bukwe says, we are ready to die for our freedom, but we are not yet ready to kill for our freedom. So that one, I'm just wanting to put it out there to say, it's been what, 50 years now? And where are we as the black nation? Where are we as the black nation? So, when you talk about the demagogy, there's a sense in which people don't realize that it's not easy being a leader. The leaders don't realize that it's not easy being a leader until they are in the leadership position. There's a video circulating on Twitter and on WhatsApp of the apartheid president, the second most apartheid president, P.W. Botha. And during the negotiations, he says something that, you see, the people you sent to negotiate with us have sold out to forces they do not understand. Because remember that apartheid was when a section of white people, the Afrikaners, were actually putting pressure on the black nation. To this day, white people have never been more than 10% of South Africa. They have never been more than 10%. At the time, I think they were actually 5%. But they were still able to establish themselves with political power as a majority because, well, voting was not given to everyone. So I think somebody said that that was the twist, whereby, for instance, in South Africa was never liberated. South Africa was never liberated in that they stole the country and then they gave back to people a vote. And that vote goes back to demagogy. And people don't realize what it means to be a leader. People don't realize what it means to be a Magufuli. They do not realize what it means to be a Sankara. They do not realize what it means to be a Lumumba. To say that they don't realize. I always say that people, sometimes we speak as if Biko committed suicide. Biko was killed by people. He was killed by police. He was in police custody. But then because we don't realize what being a leader is, because we are sold into Western culture, we fail to see the powerful leaders and the demagogues, those who are just there for being there, those who are
I think I think you are right. I think that is why that's majorly why I think the other leaders which we have, the majority of the leaders which we have on the continent, actually I've already said that about 96% of the leaders or, you know, or whatever you can call them, misleaders on the continent. I believe that is why they are moving in that direction, because majority of them, they do not understand what it takes, you know, to be a leader. Apart from a few, maybe, you know, somebody can disagree with me, but I would say like maybe like Kagame, you know, President, you know, Prime Minister Abiy of Ethiopia, maybe the guys who are doing something in Mali, you know, a few people, maybe, and Eritrea also, you know, there is these things which we are supposed to do as leaders, and even within the Pan-African world, I've seen it that people do not appreciate the sacrifice that is supposed to be made to be a leader, and that is why you see things are going the way are going on the continent. A leader who's supposed to die for the people, you know, because he will not compromise, and this is what we see in people like President Magufuli. A leader like Nkrumah, who says in one of the speeches Nkrumah gave, which is actually available on YouTube, Nkrumah said that the forces against us, you know, the forces arrayed against us, and I use the words most carefully, formidable.
Yeah.
He said entrenched and powerful. So he's trying to analyze imperialism, like I will put it in neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And he said that on one side, they try to hoodwink us with fictitious gifts. And on the other side, they try to strike fear. You know, so what he's trying to say, actually, I would like people to, you know, to analyze that speech very well. I want some people to sit down and understand what Nkrumah is saying in that speech. So he's talking about corruption, that imperialists, when they come to corrupt you, you know, fictitious, Nkrumah, what he's calling fictitious gifts. So they give you gifts, they are bribing you. And then they, you know, there is sinister. He said they are sinister. The forces are satanic in the way they operate. So he uses certain words that when you pick out those words and start analyzing that speech, I think we will come one day and start analyzing really that speech, what Nkrumah was trying to say. Because every word Nkrumah chose it carefully, and placed it in that. That is why people many times fail to understand what he was saying, because he was far ahead of his time, that it was very difficult for people during his time to understand what he was saying. So they tried to bribe him. That is what he was trying to say. They tried to bribe him so that he can abandon Pan-Africanism, abandon the African people. And he refused. And then he said that if they fail at that, they try to use fear. You know, they try to intimidate you, that if you do this, you know, we can kill you, or we can frame you and stuff like that. You know, they blackmail you, they try to blackmail you. And then when they fail at that, that is when they come to try to kill you in power. They try to kill you in power. So our leaders, let me come to you. So our leaders today is like, they do not appreciate what it takes to be a leader. So they are not willing. You can look at people like President Museveni. He goes out there to Washington and sells out Muammar Gaddafi. You know, he sells him out outright and says, you know, Muammar Gaddafi, what he's talking about is not feasible, that it is not possible to unite Africa. That is what he said in Washington. That is President Museveni. And all of a sudden, when President Muammar Gaddafi has been killed, and then he turns around, he's telling us that he is a Pan-Africanist all of a sudden. So they do not appreciate the expediency. You know, they like to engage in the expediency, you know, in the expedient, what is expedient for them, and that is to retain power. I see people like President Museveni as someone who just wants to retain power and be in power, because for 30 years, if you have not been able to lift a country from a third world, from a third world country into at least a middle income status country, I think that is absolutely failure. I really don't care how much you have built up the foundation. But if you have been there for 30 years and you have not been able to achieve this, at least a middle income status country, I think you are a failure. You know, you are absolutely a failure. And this is what I see with people like President Museveni. And this is not only him, but all the other African leaders who really do not appreciate that you are supposed to die for your people. You are supposed to put your life on the line for your people, not compromising all the time. Because this compromise has not led us anywhere. You can see what happened in South Africa. You see, you can see what happened with Museveni himself, because he's always compromising so that he can stay in power. He thinks that by compromising, then you will get time to build the nation. And it is not like that. So they do not appreciate what the cost that is supposed to be paid for you to be a leader, for you to be a great leader. And this is the cost which people like Magufuli paid, people like Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba of the Congo paid. This is the price people like Nkrumah, and I said Magufuli also, people like Abdul Nasser Gamal paid and said, I've nationalized the Suez Canal. You see, I will not allow, even though it is the British who built and whatever the Israelites who built the Suez Canal, it is ours now. I've nationalized. So this is the price. And they think that there's another way around this. And actually this thing has also seeped into the Pan-African world. And it is a worry for me. It is a worry for me. And they normally masquerade around and they say, for them, they are Democrats. And they are for non-violence. They say they are, I'm a Democrat. I'm for democracy. You see? And then I'm for human rights. I'm for non-violence. You see? So when we are to discuss
let me come in here. I think I should come coming in. Firstly, let's start with Mwalimu. When you see the flip-flopping that is happening now with Pan-Africanists who basically repent every now and then. You see, if you had listened to Mwalimu when he was alive, he said that what happened at the formation of the OAU was a faux pas on his side. Because when Nkrumah was saying, right now we have to unite the entire continent, Mwalimu said, let's do it block by block. He came to actually repent. That was Mwalimu back then. But because we are not listening, we always lose it. We always lose it, and then we come back later, and then we repent. And that's what they want. That's what they want. They want us to repent. The case of South Africa, Mwalimu said it to Thabo Mbeki, to say that in the 90s, when Mbeki was supposed to come in 1993, coming back for the elections, Mwalimu said, remember, you guys did not win. Whatever you do, you're going to have to consider them. Whatever you say, when you say constitution, them. When you say land, them. Whatever, when you say property, them. You are always going to have to consider them, because you did not conquer. You did not win against anyone. So the concept of governance, has been taken away from us. Like the way in which we are governed now, it's an import. And that is a problem. And we don't want to look at it, because what? We are Democrats, we like democracy, we are non-violent. I know that my sister always freaks out when you tell her that you are non-violent, because the system is violent. The system is violent against the black nation. So let me finish with, before I come to Gavi, PLO once taught me something that, some of these things that we get from the Western nations are largely out there. Because, for instance, when Museveni is now in some sort of a tour with the World Bank, saying that Uganda is now a middle-income country. No, there are hungry people in Uganda. There's more hungry people in Uganda than there are people who are eating. That's not what a leader does. That is not what a leader does. We need to go. When PLO says that you cannot tell me about GDP per capita, because 90% of that wealth is in 1% of the people, and now you're telling me that everyone in the country has a GDP of this much. So we need to divorce those kind of things. We need to go beyond that, because. But then remember, as I finish, Marcus Garvey was called a moron by Pan-Africanists. Like the Pan-Africanists who, when Marcus Garvey came into being, Pan-Africanists thought, wait, no, he's pushing it too far. They literally called him a moron. And to this day, we are still, remember, we've got what we call media intelligence. Our Pan-Africanist is learned on TV, is learned on the evening news. So there's no Pan-Africanist.
Just call it brainwashing. I would try to brainwashing. It's brainwashing.
Exactly,
I think people will understand it clearly.
Yeah.
Is that right? Oh, please continue. Please continue.
Oh. Yeah, so the case of South Africa and uniting Africa, the wedge that has been put between our nations as black people is is deep, and the fact that we still get caught up in the social issues. We are in a prison. We are in a prison, and the prison is an open society. You can do whatever you want, but it is still a prison. We need to understand the mentality of a prison. You see, just yesterday, last year, 2020, when the lockdowns were happening, they basically put all countries as prisons. I remember there were soldiers outside telling you to stay in there, stay in your house. Why? Because we still don't have self-determination. Big as we are as the African continent, we still don't have self-determination. We are still under the tutelage. And you see the concept of governance again. What we don't see is that leadership is permanent. I have said this to one of my colleagues, my acquaintances on the African Youth Book, to say that if Museveni failed for 30 years to actually do whatever he has to do, and he still believes that he needs to be sitting on the presidency for him to make any change, he has failed. He has failed. I've seen what they are doing in Uganda. They are trying to indigenize. They are trying to have their own car manufacturers. They are trying to indigenize everything.
It's a
But
failure.
still, leadership is permanent. Like right now, all you see how all our presidents are somehow delegated to like the fringes of society. All our former presidents are delegated to the fringes of society. The incoming president must hate the outgoing president. Why? Because leadership for us as Africans is in disarray. We don't have a permanent leadership. If you go to UK, for instance, there's only one leader, is the Queen, with her privy councils. There's like Knights of the Garter. She's got so many advisors, and some of the advisors, actually, the British Parliament is an advisor to the Queen. As dejected from the situation as she may seem now, they basically serve at her pleasure. There was the chancellor of the Exchequer is basically the finance minister. He works at the behest of the Queen. His term limits are basically what the Queen decides that they are. So right now, I see Sister Ingrid is sending me a message here talking about how the violence that we confront. When Nkrumah says that they are pernicious, they are formidable. Yes. He was talking about books that we are reading now. Now we've got white malice. We was talking about things that we are reading about now were happening then, and they're still happening. Somebody says, I fail to understand why Black South Africans, why people in South Africa have this affinity to white people. They've got this affinity to jobs and being able to be employed. And I read the Green Book once, and Muammar Gaddafi said that no one should be an employee. I subscribe to that, and I'm not going to explain it. You need to understand that no one should be an employee. And until you understand these nuances, which our leaders, let's say maybe they were not able to make comprehensions out of them, but we need to understand that we are a nation under siege. We are a nation that is surrounded on all sides by NGOs, by economic hitmen, by people who will come and steal. Somebody made a joke. It's Jimmy Dore. He made a joke on the discovery of gold in $12 trillion worth of gold in Uganda. He said, by the way, you need to realize that Uganda will start needing democracy now. They will start looking at Uganda and trying to import democracy. But then Museveni has done quite well to basically shoo away these NGO media pushed candidates. But then still, when it comes to Museveni, there is something called permanent leadership. And until as Africans we understand that, we are lost, because all of what our former leaders know must continue being applied. If a leader worked for the people, we need not throw that leader away. We are always saying that never forget Magufuli. Never forget Magufuli. Never forget what Nkrumah did. I mean, yes, they might have dragged his name through the mud, deconstructed everything that he was constructing for the people of Ghana, but we must never forget that.
Yes. Absolutely, and I believe, actually, I believe that that is a very, valid point, and that's a very valid point of view where you are coming from when you're talking about not forgetting our leaders and what they have constructed. And that is where I was listening to Professor Atham Tambara from South Africa, and he was saying that the bad thing about Mugabe is that he did not write down the things, his thoughts and where he envisioned to take as Zimbabwe, or what he envisioned for Africa. Even though we are in the information age and some of the speeches have already been made and they are those are records definitely. But he did not put his thoughts in writing like what Nkrumah. What I like about Nkrumah is that Nkrumah, I think he was a true prophet. He was a visionary uh, who understood what to do in the right time, even though he was overwhelmed to a certain level by these forces to the extent that they were able, to overthrow him. And I know some people will ask questions. Then, if Nkrumah was that a genius, why was he able to be overthrown? That he was not able to put things together. But those are things which we can sit down, all of us, and discuss and examine, because we need to understand what went wrong that Nkrumah was not able to retain power with all his genius, because I believe Nkrumah definitely was a genius. This man was a genius. But that's a topic for another day, which we need to sit down and analyze, because Pan-Africanism is very big. But Nkrumah was a genius, and he wrote down everything. This man wrote down everything. Imagine, he came before I was born. A man died, how many years before I was born? 8 plus 6. That's around 14 years before I was, because I was born in 1986. Someone who died, 14 years before I was born. I came, later on, about 26 years later, and I found his literature, and I was amazed at this man and what he accomplished. You see, someone died, and then around around 40, 50 years later, I come across his literature, and I'm amazed, and I said I want to be, Pan-Africans like what Nkrumah. This is more than 50 years later. So this is the importance of putting down the records, what somebody wanted to do. And then this helps the next coming generations to remember you. And this is one of the things I appreciate Nkrumah about, really. He said everything and then put it down in speeches and wrote it down in books, so that if he is not able to accomplish this task, and I think that the best thing he gave us is not what he did for us, but what he wrote down. He wrote down all his thoughts and gave them to us and say, the next generation. And actually, even when he was in Guinea Conakry, he said that, the knowledge that death can never extinguish the torch I've lit in Ghana and Africa. And he said that long after I'm dead and gone, I know the light will continue to burn and be born aloft, giving guidance to all people. You see, so he was in some way a prophet, like a real prophet. Like, he spoke things, and those things, they came into existence. Because, like I said, imagine someone like me came 50 years after Nkrumah has died, and I came across his literature and his speeches. Because I remember the first book I came across that awakened me to this man is a book called The Selected Speeches of Kwame Nkrumah. It was a gentleman who put it together. It's called Samuel Beng. And I read, and I was fascinated by this character. This guy was always talking about Africa in every single speech, whether he was talking about, he was talking to women, whether he was talking to children, whether he was talking about what. There's no speech Nkrumah gave and there was no word Africa, about 3 or 4 times. So I was fascinated, and I was like, wow, which kind of person is this? So I started doing my research. So I think this is the importance of putting down records, so that the next generation, so that we can remember them. Today we can remember Magufuli. Definitely the speeches are out there, even though he did not write down a book. He did not have time to write a book. They took him out in a very sinister way. But I think these are very, very important. When it comes to Museveni, I think Museveni is a follower of, is a very staunch follower of President Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. But I think that Museveni is a follower of an unevolved Julius Nyerere, who was still in power. You know, the Julius Nyerere who was egotistical in nature, because if you remember when Nkrumah, when Nyerere was opposing Nkrumah, saying we should unite Africa small in parts, it was egoism to try to show that he was also an intellectual, giant during that period. Because some people even they said that Nkrumah had met his equal in their writings. Because when Nkrumah was arguing for immediate unification, a political union, a political government, Nyerere was also arguing that we are not gods to will the things into existence. We cannot just will the union government right now into existence. Let us go step by step. So I think that from my observation, that was an egotistical, Nyerere. And that is the same Nyerere. That is the same Nyerere which Museveni has continued to follow. Because when you look at Museveni's arguments against Gaddafi, is that Museveni was saying that Africa is so diverse with too many languages. We cannot unify the continent. If you look at the leaked documents, the WikiLeaks documents, when Museveni went to Washington, those are the things he was talking with when it comes to the Americans, when he was having his discussions with the Americans. He was saying that what Gaddafi is saying is not feasible. We cannot unify the continent. And today we have the same person is here talking about unity, that African unity. He's trying to show that he's a Pan-African. Museveni is a Pan-African. When he sabotaged the Pan-African project. Now, this is the same thing which happened with, President Julius Nyerere. President Julius Nyerere argues this in 1963 and blocks the union government. But Nkrumah continues pushing, and then the last nail in the coffin for the defeat of Nkrumah came in 1964 in Cairo, when they put out a declaration of non-interference into the states, the independences, and they said that the African Union and other African states cannot interfere in the affairs of the other African countries.
Yeah,
so that meant yes.
Yeah, to note
so
that one.
Let me land a little bit here. So okay. Nyerere later on after the death of Nkrumah, Nkrumah dies in 1972. He was overthrown from power in 1966. Nyerere comes to Accra in 1997. So what Nyerere says in 1997 in Accra says that Nkrumah was right.
Yeah.
You see? So he said that Nkrumah was right, that we should have unified the continent. And again, he says, actually, this egotism actually still seeps into his speech. He says Nkrumah was right, but his egotism still seeps into the speech and says, but it was really unrealistic, but he was right. And he says, Nyerere says that the current generation of leaders have not pursued, African unity with the same vigor that Nkrumah pursued, and they need to, if we as Africans are going to survive, as a race, if we want to live again under the sun, we have to unify the continent. And so he appealed to the next generation of young Africans to pursue African unity if we want to survive, because in the next world in which we are entering, weak nations will not survive. Small nations and weak nations will not survive, and the weak people will not be able to survive. We have to unify. So those were the last words in Accra, of Nyerere when he visited Accra in 1997. And this is the Nyerere which people like Museveni are not following. They are not following. They stopped at the Nyerere who was in 1963, those old years, who were saying we need to go step by step. And when you go and examine Museveni, this is the nature of Museveni. And so he's consumed with conserving his power, he's consumed with having his power, to himself. So he unleashed all this capitalism onto the Ugandan people, that he invites Indians, he invites whoever, the Chinese, to say he's, doing investment, come and invest, all that kind of stuff. So without thinking, without any, sort of African thinking within him, and saying that, but my people, we need to build our own industries. We need to have our own industries. We need our own entrepreneurs. Where are our own entrepreneurs? Have I made efforts to, to grow an African entrepreneurship base? He has not done that for the last, when you were talking about for the last 30 years, he has been in power. And now he's waking up and saying what? He's saying that the white people in World Bank, they told him that he should sell Uganda Commercial Bank, which was a state-owned enterprise, and all the other state enterprises which were in the country. He sold them, and now he comes back today and tells us that the white people from the World Bank, they advised him to do this, but it was a wrong thing, because they told him that if he sells the bank, the interest rates will come down, and then capital will be available to people for people to be able to industrialize. So he says that they told him something wrong. So now how can you realize this mistake after 30 years in power? And when you are old, you are already going. And these guys have brought Bobby Wine. They want to install now Bobby Wine. You see? So they are rallied behind Bobby Wine. They want to install it. So these are the problems which I see that. And up to now, he's still making that mistake. He thinks that he can practice capitalism better than these guys, the capitalists, the Britain, France, where it has failed actually. Capitalism has failed in Greece. Greece is the mother of Europe, when it comes to civilization. But capitalism failed there. Portugal, all these countries, Italy, capitalism failed. Capitalism has failed all over Europe. It has failed even in the US. But Museveni thinks that he can practice that capitalism, in its entirety. And so he's inviting the Indians, they should come and invest, Chinese should come and invest, investors all over, and then put the wages down and stuff like that. So that outlook, I see that Museveni is really still way behind. And when he's following Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, which is very good, he's following the unevolved Julius Nyerere, who had not realized the mistake. Julius Nyerere actually came to say that after Nkrumah died, he sat down to reflect on his life after Nkrumah died in 1972. And he said that he started studying Nkrumah for 10 consistent years. He said, I studied Nkrumah for 10 consistent years, and what Nkrumah was saying and what he was writing, that he realized late what Nkrumah was saying when Nkrumah had gone. So he never understood. He said that he never understood Nkrumah until he studied Nkrumah for 10 consistent years after Nkrumah dying. And that is when his mind was opened up and understood what Nkrumah was saying. And so that led to the things he said in Accra in 1997, before he went back to Tanzania and before his death. So this is the problem, that some of these leaders, they fail to evolve and then to implement the solutions of African leaders. Some of them are just cowardly, like they fear so much, like they don't want to put their lives at stake. And some of them are outright greedy, that, no, I will care about myself. So if the white people give me what I want, that is it. I can sell out to the people. I can just abandon them. I don't care. As long as my family, my children are studying in Britain, in Netherlands, in the United States, wherever, I have a house there. People like Nana Addo, he has a house in Britain, but he has been going around. Now he's going to the IMF because the economy has failed. So this kind of attitude, I'm not saying only Nana Addo has done it. All the other African presidents, this is what they have been doing. But it is because they have rejected the philosophy of our forefathers. They have rejected the solutions of our forefathers. They have rejected the methods which our forefathers gave us, that these are the methods which you guys should employ. So I think that we need to go back and let me let you come back in on the point which you wanted to make. And I'll come back and ask you one question, because I think we need to close. We need to close very quickly from now, a few minutes from now. But we don't want to close before we go on to a solution, because we don't want to be people who are just talking about things without a solution. There is a couple of things which I'm involved in, which we are looking at as solutions, and some of those solutions we are working with the PLO Lumumba Foundation, another organization called Connect Africa. So we are working on solutions which will help us to lift this continent, because we believe that we are the generation that has to do that work. If no one does the work, we have to do the work. And we understand all the challenges out there, but we are armed with these tools. We are armed with the philosophy, Nkrumah's philosophy, and we believe that we are ready for that work. So I'll come back later to elaborate on those, those things which we are doing, and then maybe you can tell me also what you guys are doing in your side of the corner, and then we can combine our
Yeah.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
I noted one, the infallibility of the inherited borders. I think that was in
Yes.
Cairo. You
Yes.
see, when we, as Black people, as a Black nation, as Black Africa, when we adopt the prescript of the imperials, of the invaders, we find ourselves being in small silos. I think this is what Arikana talks about. We are very small, we are insignificant, disunited. The infallibility of the borders was so that when they overthrow one of us, there will be
Yes.
something called you cannot interfere. When they push Nkrumah out, it is
Actually,
legally impossible. It's legally impossible for Mwalimu to come in and say, no, we've seen that there is something wrong. You see, there is this
it
thing
was a
about
strategy.
the
It was a
organization,
neocolonial strategy.
yeah, the establishment of the OAU. Pied Pipers, clever blacks, we call them clever blacks in South Africa. Clever blacks had this thing of saying that, okay, as we are going to establish the OAU, we will no longer be presidents in our own countries. We will no longer have the say that we used to have. We'll basically go there as governors. But you see, the not understanding what is happening is when Mwalimu says, no, we can do it. We can take the prescripts of the West, we can take the prescripts of the colonizers and do it one thing at a time. And by the way, the OAU is older than the European Union.
Of course.
Like, the OAU is older than the European Union. What has the OAU done? Like, we need to have an OAU that's going to say, okay, we have one visa. We need to be able to have people moving. But then before they get people moving, they've got people trading. How are people trading when they don't have a passport to actually see one another, to travel the country? Actually, tomorrow, a colleague of mine in Zim is being buried. But for me to go to that funeral, I must have an ID and a passport and a visa. I must have all these things. And then it's basically just holding the political kingdom back. Because once we have the political kingdom, and then Africa will be united, because if we, like, the issue of disunited, the fact that we are not united right now, it's not only by the national borders. The people themselves are not united. The nations within South Africa are not united. They're shooting each other every day because as Fanon writes that what George Floyd said, I can't breathe. Fanon says that the reason you see the uprisings on the African continent is because we cannot breathe. The imperial leg is on our neck. So while the imperials are dictating to us what we must do, we need to understand that we cannot breathe and we cannot be babied. However, covertly they can do it. There are a lot of Pied Pipers. There are a lot of people who will sweet talk you into believing their nonsensical story, let me call it that. Their coward position of saying that
Yeah.
we need to right now that we have been conquered, we must then respect international protocol, of which the international protocol that is here now, we don't know where it comes from. Just like common law, we don't know whose common law we are applying in our courts. We don't understand how government runs. And they are deliberately making it such that we don't know how government works. We don't know how nations relate to one another. We don't know how we interact with each other as a continent. We don't know how banking works. Basically, we are under tutelage. We are children who are told what to do because you only have so much information that you can only do so much. So if we go back to the three steps: political kingdom, African unity, and then construction, and a serious reconstruction on an continental level. Because what did the colonizer want? What did Cecil Rhodes want? Cecil Rhodes wanted to have a train, a railway that left Cape and went to Cairo. Why don't we think like that? Why is it that only them can actually have that mentality of saying that I want to connect Cape and Cairo? But when you come and you do it, they call you a populist. They call you somebody who's a political player, who's basically what do they say? A tribalist. He has galvanized his tribe, and now they want to control each and everything that is happening, which is what they were doing. And Sister Adwa just sent a message when we were talking about unemployment and employment. Africans did not understand the concept of employment. I know in South Africa there was a law passed, the Glenn Gray Act of 1880s, in the 1800s. The Glenn Gray Act said that, okay, these people don't want to work. They don't want to work for anyone. They work for themselves. So what are we going to do? Somebody wrote that, okay, there was a dog tax in South Africa, which reminds me of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, because they had what is this? They had, I think it was a hard tax, which basically was the straw that break the camel's back, to say, why are we paying for our own? In South Africa, there was something called a dog tax. So all these taxes which were imposed by the colonials, so that we may each and every now and then we need their currency to be able to pay them for the right to occupy our own land. And until we actually come into the realization of who our people are, who is advocating for what, I think we are not past a revolution. We need revolutionaries. It's only a revolution that is going to turn things around, because only a revolution can rewrite contracts. You cannot be elected and change any contract, any colonial contract. You inherit colonial contract. Now we need a revolution that is going to say we are militarily ready to defend our land. We are militarily ready to stand for our neighbors. We are economically sufficient or self-sufficient to be able to support the entire continent. And until we get to that point, we are going to remain in this tutelage of being told what to do and when to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've taken really your point, and I've picked a very important point, but I want to go as far as there's a point which you spoke about multiple leaders or an established system of leadership. There's one thing which Ray Dalio said. I don't know whether you have come across that name. Ray Dalio is one of the biggest, he owns the biggest hedge fund, which is called the Bridgewater Associates. He wrote a book called The Principles of Dealing with the Changing World Order. I have it in one of my videos here or on YouTube. I have that analysis. I try to make a comparison between his analysis and my analysis, which I came up with regarding Africa's liberation, the stages which we have gone through from 1791 up to 1804, which happened in 80, and then 1945, and then today what is happening, because Ray Dalio goes back into history and examines history. So Ray Dalio said he was looking at empires and how they rose and then declined, because that book is called Principles of Understanding of Dealing with, how to understand, to deal with the changing world order and how nations rise and fall. So he's looking at the United States as a falling empire, and then China as a rising empire. That is the subject of another day, because there's a lot of things. Actually, today we've covered a lot of things in a very short time, which we need to break down when we are talking about corruption, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, different things. There's a lot of things which we need to dedicate time to and break down, extensively. But Ray Dalio said that for a nation to succeed, it must have multiple generational leaders. It has to have leaders, on a generational basis, that multiple leaders who are good, actually, for them to, for a nation to be successful. He pointed out China, for example. China, you can see that Mao Zedong came, and then Mao built the foundation of the nation because he got the independence for them, and then consolidated. He helped them to consolidate the independence by unifying China in 1949, and then he started building the foundation work. So when he built the foundation work and he left, then Deng Xiaoping took over. Deng Xiaoping corrected some of the mistakes. but the foundation had already been built by Mao Zedong. It's the same thing which happened with Nkrumah, that he built the foundation, but the people who came after him, they were not of the same mind. They were not Pan-Africanists. They were imperialists. So they decided to destroy everything. So he had built a strong foundation that even Nkrumah, when he was in exile, he said that when he was actually was not in exile, but when he was living in Guinea, because from himself he said, I was never in exile. Anywhere in Africa is my ground, is my space. So I was never in exile. So he said that in Ghana, I got independence for them. I gave them independence and I built up the country for them. It is up to them if they destroy it. The only reason I want to go back to Ghana is because of African unity. That is the statement which Nkrumah made. So it needs, so Red Dalio says that for a generation, for a country to succeed, for a nation to succeed, it must have multiple generational leaders who are good and consistent in building. So Mao comes in China, unifies the China, fights with the Revolutionary Communist Party, Chinese Communist Party. They achieve this independence for China. They unify China. Mao unifies China in 1949. They immediately start experimenting, with what this West, the Chinese Cultural Revolution and stuff. The West normally condemns what the Cultural Revolution was a disaster. It was not a disaster. These were experiments to finding a solution. So when Mao established China and did the Cultural Revolution, then when he went away, Deng Xiaoping came. The foundation had already been established. Deng Xiaoping, continued and built on that. Then the next president, I think was called who? Then the next president, Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is just now consolidating the achievements of the past and adding also his quota as a very strong leader. So that is why you see that China now is growing rapidly. While the United States, for example, like in the first quarter of this year, the United States, its economy contracted by 1.4%. China, it was growing by 4.3%. The second quarter, the United States contracted again by 1.6. For those who are watching, what I mean by contracting, an economy contracting, it means it's declining. The economy is declining, is in a steep decline. So United States declined in the first quarter from January up to March by 1.4%. And then the second quarter, it contracted by 1.6%. It declined by 1.6% from March, from April up to June. The United States, China continued to grow. In the second quarter, China continued to grow. I think in the first quarter, they grew by 4.6. In the second quarter, they grew by 4.3. You see, so China is continuing to expand. And of course, analysts and economists have pointed out that China definitely is going to overtake the United States. And the time for that overtaking has actually reduced. It has continued to reduce. Others were saying, 2040. They brought it to 2030. Others brought it to, like 2025 now is what they have been talking about, between 2025 and 2030. So the time has continued to reduce. So, but how did this all come about? The leaders were able to consistently, to hold and make their part and contribute instead of destroying. And this is where I see that Africa is very, very much similar in a certain way to China, because if you analyze very well, the revolution that happened in China is exactly the type of revolution which we need here. And like you spoke about, it is high time that now we start, as Pan-Africans, as intellectual Pan-Africans who really want this liberation, who want this continent to be liberated, we start having these conversations and we start putting this consciousness out there regarding a revolution that is needed on the African continent. And that revolution should be, militarily, whatever means that is necessary. Because many times I've found that even within the Pan-African space, they they stop you from talking about military engagement. And they said, oh, no, violence, no, that one is not we cannot, these people, you see that these people consciously or unconsciously have been socialized. I have a friend of mine who's called, I have a friend of mine who served in the United States military in Iraq, and he wrote a book called The Black Matrix. And he said, he lives in the United States, and he said that Africans have been socialized not to want to fight. So they always tell them that they should not fight. They should not fight. Everything should be non-violent. Yet imperialism is everywhere, is causing havoc, is causing violence all over the earth. but Africans are told no path forward. So I find it that some of our Pan-Africanists, consciously or unconsciously, they have been socialized into this way of thinking that they are not supposed to engage in violence for them to liberate themselves. And by violence, I mean taking up armed struggle, to liberate yourself, even though liberation, most of the liberation, whether you're talking about in Africa or, the foreign, the other countries like China, Cuba, all that liberation has been violent. For people to liberate themselves, to really liberate themselves and consolidate the liberation, it has been through, taking up armed struggle. And that is what we have seen historically, and it is bound to happen. But these people, they don't want to, to look at it. So it is high time, I think, that we start having these conversations and we put this understanding out there that as young people, we have to make ourselves ready. We have to prepare ourselves, because this is an option that is inevitable. Because 90% of the liberation struggle, true liberation, where liberation has come and has been consolidated in places like Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea, China, all these, Venezuela, all these have come through armed struggle. And we are not different. We are not a different people when it comes to liberation, because the achievement of power, the achievement of power and the consolidation of that power, like Mao said, power comes through the barrel of the gun. That is what, Mao said. Then, these guys, they understood it. So Mao said that if you want power, you better raise an army.
Yeah.
You better raise an army. So when Nkrumah is talking about seeking first the political kingdom, he's talking about taking power, because without power, you cannot do reconstruction. How can you do reconstruction on a massive scale like what China is doing when you don't have power, or what the United States has done? When Roosevelt came, power was very dispersed in the United States, that it was having these states, Louisiana, all these states were having a lot of power. He had to take that power from them and then build the interstate highways in the United States. So the states, they lost the power during that time, and power was centralized in one person at the federal government. So they were able to build the interstate because they understood that if they don't take that power from them, they will not be able to build the interstate highways in the United States, and then to spark the rapid growth which led to all that development that happened in the United States in 1930s and 1940s. All that came through the centralization of power. So without power and political power on a large scale in the African continent, we cannot build those infrastructures. So that is why I laugh at things like, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which definitely we'll come back to analyze another day. So I think that we need multiple leaders good leaders for us to be able to institute that development and rapid reconstruction of the African continent in every sense. Highways, we need to be building our own vehicles and ban Japanese vehicles from coming here, different vehicles coming here. We need to build our own industries, institute our own entrepreneurs, build our own planes, build our own semiconductor industries on this continent, build our own highways and trains by our own people, not Chinese, not Europeans coming here to build the dams for us. We, the people, we, the African people, need to be engaged in that kind of thing. But how can we engage in that unless we have power? We have to have political power before that. And the only means of achieving that political power, we have to be engaged. We have to be seriously engaged starting now in the discussions that are going to give us that power before we start the process of reconstruction. And if we are not honest about the means of achieving that power, then how do we expect that Africa will be, reconstructed or will be developed? So we will end up, if we fear to engage in these discussions, however painful they are, however much costly they are on us and on the continent, if we fear to engage in them, then we might as well give up, and wait for the Europeans to come and kill us, all of us, and take over the continent, like what they did to North America. They killed indigenous. They went to Australia and killed the indigenous people. New Zealand, they wiped out the indigenous people. So we might as well resign ourselves to that kind of thinking if we are not willing to engage in a serious struggle and examine, in the conversation that will lead to us having power before we do the reconstruction of our continent. So those things, I think, that type of conversation, whether it is non-violent, which we all love, we would like to achieve, political union without violence. But if it is not possible for us to achieve it without violence, then we have to engage the violent means. We have to be ready for armed struggle for us to be able to liberate our continent. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the thinking like Rhodes. Definitely, you spoke about a point where you said that we need to think like Rhodes, who wanted to also. Why can't leaders think like Rhodes, who wanted to build a railway line from Cape and then build that railway line up to Cairo, in Egypt? Why can't our leaders think in that way? Definitely, we have to think in that kind of way. But we have to have political power for us to think in that way. Our leaders, their power is dispersed. Their power is not consolidated. So the power of our leaders is not consolidated. The African continent, its power is not consolidated. So our leaders cannot think like Rhodes. Rhodes had the support of Britain, had the support of the Americans, had the support of all of Europe. So he was able to dream like this and even started doing it to try to implement it. But he met the resistance of the Africans when the independence movement started. So he met that resistance. But the purpose of the Europeans when they lodged themselves in South Africa definitely was to take over the whole African continent, like what they did in the United States and North America, Australia, when they wiped out. That was the purpose. That is why the Europeans lodged themselves there. And I've come even to think that the whites who lodged themselves in South Africa, the Europe and the whites, all of them, the neo-colonial camp, they are using them as a bargaining chip. Because when we start the process of unifying the African continent, these people will be used as a bargaining chip in case we want to eject them from the continent. Then these people might be used as a bargaining chip to try to put a break, on African unification, the unification of the continent. So what are we trying to do? My brother, are you there? Can you hear me? All right. I think he has a problem with the network. So what are we engaged in? Like I said, we are engaged in a couple of activities right now. And one of those things that we are engaged in, which I will put in the comment section, I'll put it in the comment section. We have started working because I wanted to point out the activities which we are doing as a people. We are not here just to talk about things and say Africa has these problems and that problems when we are doing nothing in our corner of the world. We are sitting down and doing nothing in our corner of the world. What we are engaged in right now as a people. My brother, welcome back. I wanted to ask you what you think that we should be doing, and definitely what you are doing in your corner. But I was also pointing out what we are already doing and what we are engaged in. We have started these petitions together with the Kwame Nkrumah. We were working with the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute, and also we are working with another organization called Connect Africa, and we are working with the PLO Lumumba Foundation. Actually, it has endorsed these petitions. And what are these petitions about? The petitions are about the demand for a united Africa. One, that is the first petition. The second petition is about a single African passport and a single African currency. Number three, the petition is about the stoppage of the wars on the African continent. So we are collecting 1 million signatures from all over the African world. What I mean by the African world, I mean on the continent, and the all people African descent, whether you're living in the United States, Caribbean, all over, like Kwame Nkrumah said that all people of African descent, whether they are living everywhere in the world, they are Africans and belong to the African nation. So those petitions, we are looking for 1 million to start petitioning the African Union and the African heads of state. So there are three petitions. One, the demand for a united Africa. Two, the demand for a single passport for all Africans and a single currency on the African continent. Three, the demand for the end to all wars on the African continent. starting with the war in Cameroon that has been going on for a very long time, whereby France has been aiding the regime over there to kill our people, you know, increasingly and consistently, our people have been dying. So these petitions have been endorsed, like I said, and we, you know, by the PLO Lumumba Foundation, you know, has endorsed these petitions, and I said I'll put them in the comment section. They have been endorsed by Pan-African Daily TV, Dr. Susan. Also, they have been endorsed by Dr. Edmond Folfak, who is a world-renowned oncologist, a doctor of cancer at Ohio State University Medical Center. They have been endorsed. Even we are trying to work with Honorable Joshua Maponga, also has agreed to endorse these petitions. And we are in conversations, so for him also to jump on board. So those petitions, I'll put them down. But as you are talking about what you are doing on your side, I will try to bring up some of those petitions so that people can see them on the screen. And I have, this channel has numerous videos, even the most recent video where we have published normally those links are in there in the comment section. So, but I'll as you are talking, I'll share on the screen also so that people can see what I'm talking about. So just for me to rephrase the question, what do you think that we as a people need to do? Because it is evident, to me, it is evident that the power right now is not in the current political system and the political leaders who are existing. They are there, but they are there temporarily. So I believe that the power is within us, the people. We need to realize that if we want to implement Pan-African solutions, then especially the Pan-African world has to reorganize itself. In a certain way. And I believe what some of the things which we are doing are those things. So what do you think you yourself we should do? And what are you doing on your side of the corner of the struggle so that we can put our efforts together to be able to move forward?
Yeah, thank you. I always say that on a basic level, we must develop an ideology, which is what China did. The first thing China did, which is what I'm doing on the side with Sister Ajwa and the State of the African Diaspora, they're developing a curriculum. That's the first thing we need, to be able to teach our children what to do, when to do, and what has happened, because we have forgotten the collective pain that has brought us here. We have forgotten our historic existence that has brought us here. Right now, we are swimming in adversarial politics, and that's not how it should be. We cannot have leaders who are not generational. We cannot have leaders who think that generational is when your son. You see, so what China did, there is a concept in China emanating from the Opium Wars. They call it a century of humiliation. They accepted that they had lost. They retreated, and they were able to plan in 100 years. They took 100 years and they threw themselves 100 years into the future to say, what's going to be happening 100 years from now? Pan-Africanists today think in micro terms. We think in what is supposed to happen next year, 5 years down the line. We've got Agenda 2030. It's always being shifted over and over. But then we need to actually take our defeat. We need to accept that we were defeated so that we can retreat and be able to plan. When the Chinese teach their young ones, their children, their curriculum, when the Chinese are looking at their curriculum, they teach about a century of humiliation. Each and every Chinese person understand that wherever they go, it doesn't matter where they are, wherever they go, they need to be able to dominate because they were once humiliated. As Africans, we have forgotten the collective pain of the invaders, of imperialism and colonization. We must remember that as the African continent, there can be another conference to mirror the Berlin Conference. There can be another conference with the new superpowers now. When Europe was fighting amongst itself, they called a conference. Now, China and the US are going to start fighting amongst themselves, and they're going to call a conference. They can call it a Beijing conference, and they can decide how do they divide the continents amongst themselves. How do the superpowers find a way? How do the superpowers find a way to actually divide the continent while there are people on the continent who are not consulted? So now we must not forgive, we must not forget. There is a quote from the first democratic president of South Africa saying that
Yeah, my brother, can you hear me? Looks like the internet has gone off. Oh, sorry. So I have tried to put the descriptions in the chat, but I'll put it also in the description. In the chat, I have put the links to that petition, to those petitions. The petitions, like I said, there are 3, and I have put them in the chat. Those petitions, like I said, we are working on them with the PLO Lumumba Foundation, Dr. Edmund Folfak, Dr. Susan, Pan-African Daily TV. Yes, so all these people have endorsed those petitions, and you need to go out there and sign these petitions. What we understand today is that without effort, this continent cannot go anywhere. The leaders have failed, and if those leaders have failed, then we have to take it upon ourselves. We have to take it upon ourselves to do the work, to do the heavy lifting, okay? And by heavy lifting, I mean that we as a people have to do the work, okay? We have to do the work, and that work starts with the small things which we can do. I have put the petitions in the chat room one by one. You can go out there and sign them. My brother has a problem with the network, but I'm saying that let us go and sign these petitions and move these petitions. Even if we reach 1 million people before any celebrities, that is good. But we know and we understand that if we have our celebrities on board, these celebrities will help us, okay? If these petitions can be pushed to our celebrities who influence a lot of people, then we'll be on an advantageous side, okay? We will be advantaged that we will be able to achieve our objective very quickly. Now, this is just a start. This is just the beginning. So it is not the end. It's not a revolution. Is not merely about you signing petitions and you stop there. No. So these are mobilization tools. There's what we call tools for mobilization. So then we will know the next stage. The next stage will unfold by itself, and then we will see where to go from there. But let us start by signing these petitions. Let us bring on board all our celebrities. Wodimaya, Dr. Susan already has signed, or Pan-African Daily TV, PLO Lumumba has already signed. Okay, you can bring on all your, celebrities in South Africa, celebrities in Kenya, celebrities in Uganda, celebrities in Ghana, celebrities in the United States, all of them of African descent, or who are Africans and Africans, celebrities in Egypt, Algeria, Morocco. All these are African countries, okay? They are African countries, so don't ever allow our continent to be said that it has Middle East. There's no Middle East in Africa. There's only one Africa. So they cannot say that Morocco, Algeria is part of the Middle East, or Egypt is part of Middle East. It's not part of Middle East. This is Africa. All those are Africans. So all our celebrities, we need them on board, because if we are going to work, we are going to work together. Our celebrities in Nigeria, who are very aggressive and forceful, Burna Boy, Wizkid, all of them, Two-Face, all of them, we need them, Tiwa Savage. We need you guys to come and sign on these petitions, because our generation has to write history. There's no any other generation that has to write history but ours. The last generation betrayed the cause of liberation. Our ancestors shed so much blood, and that blood was betrayed by the next generation who capitulated and gave in to imperialism. So that giving in, we must now come back to redeem. So our generation must write a new history, which, Patrice Lumumba spoke about, that Africa will write its own history, and that history will be the history of of Cape to Cairo, and then from Zanzibar up to all the way to Senegal. That is the history, and it will be written by Africans. So that means Africans will be able to tell their own narrative. That is what Patrice Lumumba of the Congo was saying when he meant that. So that history must be written today, and it must start with the small things which you think that they are insignificant. And these are the things which we are doing today. So we are reorganizing ourselves. So share this video, share with other people this understanding. And this is a channel where we do have these conversations about the continent. Honestly, we have conversations. There's no limit to what we can discuss on this channel. The only thing we cannot discuss is imperialist methods which are there to put down the African people. But as long as those methods are for uplifting the African people, we discuss everything and anything. And so let us hold hands together and organize. The channel is called Africa Reimagine. As you have seen, my name is Kwame Gonza. If you are an African intellectual out there who wants to engage in the discussions and action, not only discussions, but also the action about liberating this continent and brainstorming and the ideas that will help to liberate this continent, okay, then reach out to me. Reach out to me. I'm a very easy person to reach out to, and I'll also put my email in the chat so that you can reach out to me and let us have these discussions. Let us tell you what we are doing, and let us share the ideas of what we should be doing together. Like we told you, we are already working with the PLO Lumumba Foundations, Pan-African Daily TV, all those, Rapid Africa Plan, Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute, all these are organizations which are on the front. Pan-African Congress of Azania, okay? World Pan-African Movement, all these are organizations which are on the front struggling. So if you want to be engaged in this struggle and work with us, we are out there. I've put my email also in the chat. You can reach out to me, and then we can continue to have discussions. These discussions about the liberation of the continent, but first sign the petitions and share them with at least, if you are not a Pan-Africans, but I believe all of us, as long as you are an African, you are Pan-Africans. If you love Africa and you are a person who wants to see Africa in a better position, you are definitely a Pan-Africanist. You are definitely a Pan-Africanist. So I don't want the word Pan-Africanism to be very much removed from people, and people think that a Pan-Africanist is a very different person who thinks in a different way. No, a Pan-Africanist is someone who wants to see our continent and its people all over the world in a better position, in a very good position, in the best position there is to be in the world, okay? Enjoying the best in welfare, enjoying the best in social and economic, benefits of the world, of our resources, actually. Okay, that is what we are talking about. So that person is a Pan-African. So come, let us engage in these conversations and let us see how we can liberate our continent. This is not a joke, and we have to understand that the power is within us. It starts small with us, and we have to think on a continental scale. So I want to thank you, all of you who have watched. The channel is called Africa Reimagined. My name is Kwame Gonza. I want to thank my guest who has been here today, and I want to thank Sister Ingrid, who was here also. She was not able to connect in, but I'm sure we will be able to connect in another time. These are conversations that are recurring, and we will be having these conversations consistently. I want to thank you very much. All those who have taken time to watch, those who came at the beginning and have held it down, and those who have jumped out and watched for a short time. Share the channel. Share the channel. That is what is very important, so that we can work together and we put out the African narrative. Okay, we put out the African narrative, and we will be able to engage also another platform called Black Vision, which is an African YouTube. We'll be able to establish over there, because anytime a channel like this one, the whites, the imperialists can be able to take us off when they see us discussing matters concerning Africa. Okay, they can take us off the channel. So we have another channel called the Black Vision. You can go to blackvision.co.uk, blackvision.co.uk. Let me put it in the chat, blackvision.co.uk. That is an African YouTube. So I would encourage you to go there also and open an account and support also a brother, the Africans in the UK who have built this, and it has been around for a very long time. So let's go out there. So once we see that you are supporting this work, you are supporting the work of Africa, of rebuilding Africa, which we are engaged in. We are engaged in the philosophy of Nkrumah. Then definitely we'll open another channel there for a backup, so that if we are banned here, you can definitely go out there to blackvision.co.uk to be able, actually it has even a better interface, to be able for us to continue the conversation, because the continent must be rebuilt, and it must be rebuilt within our generation, and we are the people to do that. Like Franz Fanon said, every generation must discover its mission, and it is either it betrays that mission, or it fulfills that mission. And I think that our generation will not betray our mission. Africa must unite within our generation. Thank you very much. My name is Kwame Nkrumah, and the channel is called Africa Reimagined.